forward to that? The G7 used to be the G8.
Well, I was flabbergasted, frankly, that he would start off his comments not about trade, not about the Middle East, but about Russia and the G8.
At the G7 summit in Alberta, Canada, President Trump once again showed why no one enters the room quite like he does. As global leaders gathered to discuss war, sanctions, and multilateral priorities, Trump turned the conversation upside down with just one remark. G7 used to be the G8, he said.
G8, Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago.
And with that, Trump wasn't just revisiting the past. He was proposing a new future, one that might include Russia, or even China. A G8, maybe a G9? For Trump, this isn't about sentiment, it's strategy. He sees the removal of Russia from the G8 in 2014 not just as a symbolic loss, but as a breakdown in communication. Without Putin at the table, there's no deal to be made, no leverage, and no channel to de-escalate the conflicts that have since followed.
Putin speaks to me, he doesn't speak to anybody else. He doesn't want to talk, because he was very insulted when he got thrown out of the G8.
Trump argues that by pushing Russia out, the West lost one of its few remaining diplomatic levers. He believes it pushed Moscow closer to Beijing, forming a bloc that now challenges US and Western influence from Ukraine to Iran. What he's proposing isn't a return to the old G8. It's a reconfiguration, a forum that's less about shared values and more about direct access. The G7 was designed to bring together advanced democracies. Shared principles, rule of law, liberal markets. Trump views that as limiting. In his calculus, you negotiate not with allies, but with adversaries. That's why he said he wouldn't mind if China joined. In his words, you want people you can talk to. This reflects a broader shift in Trump's worldview, from ideological consensus to transactional power politics. Sitting across from rivals, in his view, is not appeasement, it's a strategy. A way to strike deals on trade, on supply chains, on security, without having to conform to a common political doctrine. And it's no accident that these comments came after a private meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. While Carney focused on structure, institutions, and complexity, Trump made it simple. I'm a tariff person. He wants a platform where trade-offs can happen. Fast, clear, without endless communiques. That's the essence of his G8 or G9 vision.
Bad idea. I don't mind that. If somebody wants to suggest China coming in, I think we suggest. But you want to have people that you can talk to.
The potential impact of such a shift is significant. From Trump's perspective, the upsides are clear. It reopens diplomatic lines with Russia and possibly China, two powers central to most global flashpoints today. It gives the US added weight in reshaping supply chains and trade terms, especially with energy and critical minerals in play. And it reinforces Trump's preference for bilateral leverage over multilateral consensus. But the risks are just as real. Many G7 members, especially in Europe and Japan, remain strongly opposed to inviting Russia back, let alone China. The G7 has been a bastion of democratic alignment. Opening its doors to different political ideology could fracture that core identity. It could also weaken initiatives on climate, technology standards, and human rights, areas where the West has tried to maintain a unified stance. And for allies like Ukraine or Taiwan, a diluted G7 raises new doubts. Can they count on the group for consistent backing if the table now includes their rivals? Trump's proposal may not gain traction this year, but it signals a fundamental rethinking of how America uses international forums. He doesn't want consensus. He wants negotiation. He doesn't want shared statements. He wants leverage. And if the G7 does become a G8 or even a G9, it won't be a reunion. It will be a reset, on Trump's terms.
It would be very fair, but we'll be telling people what they'll be paying to do business in the United States.
So we're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, to countries, telling them what the deal is, like I did with EU.
President Trump says the US-China trade deal is done. But just 24 hours later, he made headlines again, this time by threatening unilateral tariffs on up to 15 countries. The reason? Trump says there's no time to negotiate with everyone. So instead of new trade deals, he'll be mailing out tariff letters, take it or leave it. The deal with China may have paused one fight, but Trump's bigger strategy is now coming into focus. Resetting global trade through raw pressure. Let's take a closer look at how this shift is playing out and why it matters.
And since he doesn't have time to strike agreements with everyone, he's just going to start tariffing some countries. If you're wondering how much you'll be paying, check your mailbox.
On June 12th, President Trump confirmed he'll set new unilateral tariff rates within the next 2 weeks, ahead of a self-imposed July 9th deadline. The move targets 15 countries, including Japan, South Korea, India, and the EU, and follows what Trump calls a great deal with China. But make no mistake, this is not about China anymore. Trump admitted that negotiating with all 150 U.S. trading partners would take too long. So instead, he's moving forward with what he calls a take-it-or-leave-it tariff offer. Just as he did with the EU earlier this year, Trump now plans to send formal notices outlining what each country will be expected to pay in order to maintain trade access to the U.S. market. And if countries don't accept, higher tariffs kick in by July 9th. Behind the scenes, the picture is more complex. According to Bloomberg, the White House may quietly delay implementation for certain sectors, especially those that hit consumer prices. Think Apple, think Walmart, think auto imports. Why? Because sudden price hikes before an election year are politically risky. So while Trump talks tough publicly, his team is signaling a status quo approach behind closed doors. A 10% baseline tariff remains in place. Sensitive sectors like consumer tech, clothing, or solar panels may see exemptions, and actual enforcement may vary country by country depending on ongoing talks. This pick-and-choose flexibility allows the administration to maintain leverage without triggering financial market shocks, a balancing act between populist rhetoric and economic reality. It also signals to industries, if you want protection, lobby fast and lobby hard.
Unilateral reciprocal tariffs. The deadline for everyone except China is fast approaching in less than 4 weeks on July 9th.
So where does China fit in this bigger picture? Earlier in the week, Trump claimed a done deal with Beijing after rare earth exports were restored and tariffs were lowered on both sides. China agreed to ship key materials like terbium, dysprosium, and samarium, vital to U.S. defense and manufacturing. In return, the U.S. kept tariffs at around 55% and allowed Chinese students to remain in U.S. universities. But this deal is fragile. There's no official signature, no binding enforcement. China's export licensing system, which controls how rare earths flow, remains intact. And deeper disputes over AI chip exports and tech restrictions haven't been resolved. In effect, this deal is a pause button, not a peace treaty. And it's this model, limited concessions under time pressure, that Trump now hopes to repeat with other nations. The big risk? What worked with China may not work elsewhere, especially with allies like Canada or the EU, who are pushing back against what they call economic blackmail. So what are we really seeing here? Trump's goal isn't just a China deal, it's to rewrite global trade terms, unilaterally if needed. He's weaponizing tariffs not just to punish rivals, but to force negotiation on his timeline. And by doing it fast, through letters, not summits, he controls the clock. But that clock is ticking. With less than 4 weeks before the July 9th deadline, countries now face a clear choice: accept U.S. terms or get tariffed. This isn't traditional diplomacy, it's tariff diplomacy, and the next move is no longer up to China, it's up to the world.